Namaskar. Welcome to another episode of Editorial. Today I continue to speak about the unfortunate air crash of Air India Flight 171, which was a 7878 Dreamliner series of Air India, flying from Ahmedabad to Gatwick, United Kingdom. And if you remember, I had told you then that to analyze the preliminary report, which was published on 12th of July, early morning, 12th of July, around 2 o'clock in the morning in Indian Standard Time. To analyze that report, we would be inviting specialists, we would be inviting experts, and we did. We invited Captain Mohan Ranganathan, aviation expert, and we spoke to Mohan Ranganathan about this particular report. Captain Mohan Ranganathan hinted towards a pilot error, but then a lot of y'all wrote back to us and say that, listen, isn't it too early to blame the pilot? Why are we blaming the pilot so hastily? We haven't even seen the complete report. Secondly, is there any conspiracy to kind of protect Boeing interest? Can't it be a technical error? End of the day, a switch didn't work. Again, like I said, this is not our area of expertise, so we thought we will again re-invite Captain Ranganathan and Captain Saurabh Bhatnagar, very senior pilot, expert pilot, who is currently an instructor. We invite both these gentlemen and learn from both these gentlemen their respective point of view. And then possibly with their knowledge, their repository of knowledge, we kind of reduce and analyze and figure out for ourselves as to what exactly could have happened. So this is my editorial tonight. Let's get right into the show.
What was the need at this point of time to give any kind of, indirectly clean chit to Boeing? And Western media had already taken this as a pilot error. The report was leaked to Western media as early as 8th of July.
The AAIB is doing more harm than trying to, they were in a rush because of international pressure to come out with the report. And
they should have said which pilot has said what. That would have put everything, all the doubts to rest. When the takeoff is happening, he must have got the warning straight ahead. Why was not that brought out in the CVR, in the report?
And how the hell did they open the airport in 3 hours? Due to political pressure, nothing else. And airlines operated flights. The minister said, we're going to be transparent. If they are transparent, let them come out with a full CVR transcript, and I can tell you 90% of the doubts will be clarified.
With your permission, Captain Ranganathan, let me ask the first question to Mr. Bhatnagar. Captain, do you think the preliminary report was fair? And what is your opinion about the preliminary report?
Hi, good evening. Whatever I have seen and I've been telling on the channel, this is my own, again, personal views, my interpretation. I feel that the report is not complete. A lot of things have been left out, and it is a carefully drafted this preliminary investigation report, wherein only the pilot or human error thing has been brought out. Even if there is nothing about the technical, mechanical, electrical, electronic, anything, it should have been brought out together with what they have, the timelines, what they have given regarding the EAFR, or we call it DFDR. And of course, there is no raw data regarding the CVR. So CVR, I would say this is a sort of passing remark linking to the transitioning of the fuel control switches from the run to off position. And everything is now thereafter is a conjecture. And Western media had already taken this as a pilot error. The report was leaked to Western media as early as 8th of July. I have the link of that, wherein the Air Current, the publication, has already had the probe which was going in which direction, and referring to fuel control switches movement. And that is the thing. I would not say my objection, but what I feel, it's a sort of sketchy things, because they should come out the complete timeline of right from the word when the takeoff has happened till the time what has happened, the conversation, the CVR, the EFAR, the DFDR, but only the full cutoff switch have been mentioned regarding the transitioning, whether it is manual or they have not ruled out either they should have ruled out the inadvertent, of switching off, which everybody now has said. Then I'm also of the opinion that it cannot do inadvertent, movement. So they should have ruled out in that. They should have ruled out any kind of, malfunction of any signals, any kind of, any kind of signal, electrical signal going directly to the FedEx. All these things should have been ruled out, so that the people, everybody think, yes, now it is a sort of human error, or which have been moved. The switches have been moved physically. That again they should have been said. They just said transition, and that transition signal has gone to the EFR. We all know that CVR records different channels. We all know that pilot channel is the separate, the co-pilot channel is separate, or left and right seat channels are separate. They should have said which pilot has said what. That would have put everything, or all the doubts to rest, because we all know, and has been given in the report, that the first officer, or the first officer was flying, he was the pilot flying, and the pilot in command, Captain Saurabh, was the pilot monitoring. So that we all know. They should have come out which pilot said what, without any ambiguity. There's a lot of ambiguity, who said what, who denied. So that is all conjecture as far as I'm concerned. When you do a preliminary report like this, as per the ICAO mandate of Annex 13, Chapter 7, wherein these high profile accidents, and with involving a lot of countries as well. And as per the ICAO, you have to send these preliminary investigation report within 30 days to the ICAO, to NTSB, to all the countries involved in the investigation. So naturally, when the report is going out, it should be amply clear without any doubt. So that is why for the last 2-3 days, what is happening, we're seeing in the media why the pilot body has rejected primarily. Reason, what I am also of the opinion, that yes, in case anything is there should be firm, and they should have been, it has to be, or could have been, or would have been rather, or should be corroborated with the other malfunction thing. Should have been ruled out that there was no erroneous signal. What happened with the Japan Airlines, signal happened, or the shutting down of the engines after landing. So in my opinion, and the third thing is, what was the need at this point of time to give any kind of, indirectly clean chit to Boeing and G? What was the need to tell them no recommendation is required? Now, what happened after this? DGC has gone back to their words, and as for the Indian, the checks are being carried out. So that, in my opinion, that check, that's essay about the airworthiness bulletin of 2018. In my opinion, that what the locking mechanism failure, I think the Air India also had already addressed that in 2019 and 2023, when they changed the thrust quadrant, where involves the fuel switches. So now, in the end, what I would say, that yes, I'm just a pilot, and why it's seen, this is my own opinion, that in the para number 12, they should have come out with some more details, and with linking to the fuel control switches, and what happened during these 4 seconds, when was the rat came out, did the rat come out, there was a flickering of lights in the cockpit, what happened, all these things with the FAR, so that ruled out any kind of possibility, or establish a possibility of a deliberate movement of the fuel control switches.
Captain Ranganathan, the question to you then is, were we too hasty to blame the pilot, and are we giving a clean chit to Boeing then?
See, we are not giving a clean chit to Boeing. No, you see, if we look at the report, one thing I'd like to correct Captain Bhatnagar, they do definitely give the time when the rat deployed. It is there in the report. And I just go through why, what everybody says. Just that one-liner to say, did you do that? Why did you do that? Did you do that? Is a very, very amateurish way of putting the CVR. The cockpit voice recorder transcript should have been in the preliminary report right from the time they started the engines till the time the event took place. So that should have been there. That would have cleared a lot of doubts. Let me give you what the Air India 777 flight crew training manual, the takeoff procedure, I have the FCTM with me, and the report clearly says the first officer was the pilot flying and the captain was the pilot monitoring. So the duties are clearly defined in their book. So the takeoff, as per the procedure most airlines follow, the thrust lever is handled by the captain, because rigid takeoff is always done by the captain and never by the co-pilot. So until V1, which is the decision speed, the captain's hand will be on the thrust levers. And before that, you'll have a call for 80 knots, where you cross-check the speeds in the two speed tapes. Make sure that both of them are indicating the same speed. The next call will be an auto call from the aircraft, which will say V1. At that point, the captain has to take his hands off the thrust levers, but throughout the takeoff run, the co-pilot's hands are on the control. But I'll just read out the sequence. I took out the extract from the report. It says, as per the EAFR data, the aircraft crossed the takeoff decision speed V1 and achieved 153 knots indicated airspeed at 080833. The VR speed of 155 was achieved as per AAFR at 35. And then the aircraft air-ground sensors transitioned to air mode, which indicated the liftoff at 080839. So if you go through the sequence there, after the auto call out of V1, the captain will say rotate and it takes within a fraction of a second. And when he says rotate, the co-pilot or the pilot flying will start pulling the control column back to raise the nose for the liftoff. And when they achieve positive rate, which is confirmed by the radio altimeter and the altimeter height increasing, and the captain should call positive rate, and the pilot flying, here it is the co-pilot, he will say gear up. And the captain will take the gear up. Okay, I will move from here because if the CVR transcript had recorded all these calls, then you can follow up correctly. They will know whether there was an 80 knots call, they will know if there was a rotate call, and they will know whether the pilot monitoring the captain says positive rate. And without the positive rate from the captain, the co-pilot is not going to call for gear up. So that could explain why the gear was hanging down for the whole event. So the CVR would have established whether there was a positive rate call, and we could have analyzed from there. Now, if you look at the report, he says the air ground, it went into air mode, in which case, without the air ground sensor and the air mode, you cannot select the gear up. So they have confirmed that the air ground sensor was in the air mode. And then it also says, after liftoff, the maximum speed of 180 knots was reached at 0842, which indicates that it was developing full thrust. And then it says at 0842 to 43, that 1 second, number one fuel switch moved to cutoff, and then at 0843 to 44, another 1 second, number two fuel switch is cut off. The CVR conversation between the pilots, why did you do that? And I did not do that, is the next line on that report. and EFR of both engine values dropped below minimum idle speed. So it was not an engine failure per se. It clearly indicates the movement of the fuel switches number 1 and number 2 to cut off preceded the engine power reducing. So it is not an engine failure due to a malfunction. It is due to the fuel switches being moved to cut off. That is very clear from this part of the report. And then they also say,
Captain, I'd just like to get Captain Bhatnagar here. Captain Ranganathan says it cannot be a malfunction. It cannot be an engine failure. It is the fuel has been switched off. What's your opinion, sir?
Yeah, that's correct. I agree with him. It's not an engine failure. So that there is no doubt about that. What has happened in the to the engines where the power has gone? It is because of the fuel shut-off valve and because of the movement of the fuel switch fuel control switch from run to off position. The debate is this, that whether it, yes, we all know that it is a manually controlled. You cannot do it automatically through remote or something, but the sequence of action takes. So there is no engine failure. There is absolutely fine. Engine was absolutely running fine. The engine started losing power because of the positioning of the fuel cutoff switches from run to off position. That is where the fuel shut-off valve has been switched off. That is where the signal has gone. So, as the Captain Sir will agree with me, as far the manual movement of the switches, it's a solenoid switch. That is what it generates the electrical impulse and electrical current, which goes to the FEDEC to EEC, and then it goes to fuel shut-off valve, where the motor is run and the valve is open and closed, depending upon where is the movement of the switches is being sensed by the sensors, and the same signal is conveyed to the FEDEC, and the action physical movement of the motor is at the valve. Before that, everything is electrical signal happening. It is the movement of the switches. Yes. So now my question is this thing, and sir, I would like to again tell you that the last fourth line, if you read in this thing, that CCTV footage obtained from the airport showed the Ryanair turbine getting deployed immediately after during the initial climb, immediately after liftoff. So that they are not giving the time, what second the RAT was deployed. So I'm not saying that the thing, but the fact what I'm saying and what everybody is saying is that
I like to. There is a time line mentioned here. The
where,
RAT
sir?
starts hydraulic power at 0847.
I'm just trying to get you what the time RAT started, what the time RAT was deployed. Deployment time of RAT is also crucial.
No, they should see those. Like if you see the way when I made that statement in one of the shows, even in my article in the Hindu, I said this is a very amateurish report. It is not something you write in a very, very serious accident. They have not provided the correct information. The CVR transcript is very essential. They've not provided that. They've left a lot of, like, even that one-liner. Why did you do that? I mean, I don't think any part at that crucial juncture would have done that. And the second point, which I'd like to highlight, if there was a major emergency like this, if the engines are, even if it's a human intervention and the engines are running down, the first call should have been from the captain, who will say, my controls. Because in an emergency, you don't let the co-pilot continue. It is the captain who has to take over the controls. So if the CVR transcript is there, that call would have confirmed whether the captain was in the cockpit or not. So they've done a lot of damage by this kind of, very amateurish report. And then it also goes on to say at 8:52, engine number 1 fuel switch moved from cutoff to run, and APU door starts opening at 54, and 8:56, the engine number 2 fuel switch moved from cutoff. So if you see, it is almost 14 seconds before they start talking of. By then, the engine is run down, and The ram air turbine has deployed. Now the question is, now if these, when you talk of a dual engine, a lot of captains have also contested this statement of mine. It's not a dual engine failure as such. The two engines were shut down. And if you're going to try to relight close to the ground, maybe one of them has the ram air switch is in the overhead panel and the hydraulic panel. So here you've got both engines running down. You are trying to relight the engines. One has to take it. There has to be some CRM for one of them to reach out to the ram air. It is not one person who does. It is a call and response procedure all airlines use. So by giving this kind of an empty report, the AAIB is doing more harm than trying to, they were in a rush because of international pressure to come out with the report in 30 days, and they just pushed out garbage report.
Captain Bhatnagar, I want to ask you, the question again is, are we too hasty to blame the pilot? Are we too hasty to call it a pilot error? Is there another explanation?
Absolutely. Only thing is, see, that's what I'm saying. It has not been sent, it's not been written deliberately, but it is a conjecture. Why was the need to give one line about the pilot said, why did you do that? No, I didn't do that. Why couldn't they give the complete conversation as what the pilot captain had said? Right from the word, the takeoff with the speed, V1, VR, rotate, and thereafter all the positive climb, it will establish the sequence of events. That is what we're saying, and sir will agree with me. At the time when the liftoff is happening, when the pilot monitoring is trying to, looking at the speed to color the V1. Thereafter, he's again looking at the PFD to see the VSI and the altimeter to announce for the positive rate. At that point of time, if the both engines have been switched off manually, automatically, that's a debate. Immediately the ECAS will give the warning. That is must be because as far as normal procedure SOP, the pilot monitoring is still looking inside for the call to give positive rate so that the pilot flying can tell gear up. So in that what I could see is normal thing. If I am the pilot monitoring, if something happens within 4 seconds, my eyes are still there in the instrument panel only. I'm not looking out as a pilot monitoring. So any kind of, the moment these switch offs have happened, that means both the fuel shut-off valves have been switched off. The first thing will be, there will be audio warning, there will be all kinds of warning in the cockpit. The first thing will be the ECAS, these straight aheads in the central crystal, that will come up immediately. So that why the pilot is saying this is that, did you cut off means, it appears to me that he would have said looking at the ECAS rather than looking at the central pedestal. Obviously, he's not looking at the central pedestal nobody looks at the central pedestal at that point of time at the critical when the takeoff is happening. He must have got the warning straight ahead. Why was not that brought out in the CVR, in the report? That what did the pilot call? Seeing what? Looking at the switch he called up, from where he got the indication that the switch, the fuel switches have been cut off, either by seeing it or by looking at the ECAS where the fuel engine valve light will come or the sound will come. Where is this? Everything is missing in that one line. So that's what I'm saying. How can you deduce from there that the pilot would have done it manually? Where it is written that was on what was the input to the pilot, to that pilot who said, did you cut off? On what input he said? He can have only a visual input or a audio input. Audio input is basically for the warning, and the visual input is what the oral and the video on the warning is there in front of them. Nobody is going to look down. No, he's not. It's not supposed to look down in central pedestal. So my thing is, this report is faulty. He should, at the same time of saying, the report should have said, this is the time, this is the timeline, and thereafter give the complete CVR timeline, then it will actually form the sequence of the event. That is how you reconstitute a flight path. That's an accident. They have just said it like this. One pilot's, other pilot replied, no, I did not do it. And what was the input of that pilot who said this? That is extremely important. Okay, so my thing is that it is very sketchy, it is very hazy, and they should have come out on some more detail on this. So there is no ambiguity and there is no, I would say, debate on that it was a dual engine failure. No, it was not an engine failure. It was a It was a manual movement of a fuel shut-off valve without any failure. The debate is who did it. It is the malfunction of the signal which did it, with like what had happened in the ANA Airlines, or it was a physical movement of the thing, because other than the manual, because it's a spring loaded switch, you have to move it physically, you have to lift it and move it back. Only pilots can do it, or somebody third person in the cockpit who's there. It has to be a human who has to physically lift it automatically. It will not slide down. So debate is only thing that if they have said this, if they have hinted towards that, then at the same time they should have said that yes, this is because of the same thing. Well, because of the same thing, that they should have correlated that. Only then that would have been a complete report that yes, this is what the problem is.
So, Captain Ranganathan, then the question is it a digital failure?
I have spoken to experts on this, and they confirmed that this cannot be a digital or a software error cannot move that. It has to be physically moved. That is all. But I also want to point out a very, very important point in, I don't know how they slipped it up, because normally this particular line, they would have wiped out because they don't like anything coming on an airport. You see the last line before the progress of investigation. It says at 0814.44, crash fire tender left the airport premises for rescue and firefighting. They are supposed to, the firefighting is supposed to reach in 4 minutes. It is the same thing. That is the standard. So if a firefighting equipment cannot reach a crash site in 4 minutes, they should have done exercises earlier and timed it. Now we have to check, are there any crash doors at the end of the runway where in the Mangalore, when I went to do the inspection, I found that gate was locked. There was no CISF personnel. And I said, how are you going to get through? And then the airport director says, no. In case of a crash, we'll bash through the gate. And in the report, you will see, they say that it took 3 minutes, 55 seconds. Even Schumacher couldn't have done it in 3 minutes, 55 seconds there, with all those hairpin bends and wet, narrow thing. And everyone there were burned to death. I've got photographed charred bodies, 158 bodies seated there. Now here, if they have left the premises, see, the crash has taken place before. And they've left only at 14:40, almost 5 minutes later, which means the airport rescue has not done the function. So did the DGCA or Airport Authority Safety identify this during the audit? It's a big question, and they should mention all that. It is not just the failure of a pilot which involved in a crash. It is also the services. And if you see the NOTAM which is issued immediately after the crash, they say there was RFFS is 0, which means rescue and firefighting services was 0. There was no foam or chemical. You can't fight a fuel fire with water. You need foam and fuel, the chemicals. And it was 0. And how the hell did they open the airport in 3 hours? Due to political pressure, nothing else. And airlines operated flights. There was no firefighting in the airport. How come nobody is talking about that? People are diverting. They are saying Boeing is doing this. But we have to look into our own selves, look inward and see where we have failed for flight safety.
Why is this report, and that too, it's a Government of India report, so it's not made by some international companies or international body. It is made by the Government of India. Why is this report trying to hedge, like you gentlemen say, if at all it is, why is it trying to hedge important information? That is the first question. Why was it released to international media before Indian media? Captain Bhatnagar, what's your view on this?
See, I told you that 8th of July I got a link, and was one TV channel wanted to do a debate on as early as 9th of July. So I asked him, what is the basis? He said, we have got one link, and this report is, the air current. They sent me the link that the probe is focusing on the fuel control switches, and exactly 3 days later, the same thing is happening. We saw in the preliminary investigation report. And then again in the Wall Street Journal, it was leaked in one day before they published. So my take is, yes, did the report was sent earlier for this is all speculations again. My own personal views. Was it sent to US or NTSB or something? I don't know what is that. How did they come to know, Wall Street Journal and the Air Current publication, that something is happening with the AIB, where they are looking at the possibility of fuel control switches being moved from the run to off position? How did they get to know? Naturally, somebody from the AIB, which also had NTSB member, I think so, and the ICAO member and the other state and thing. So somebody must have definitely leaked it. Once the report is leaked, so the narrative, what my in thinking narrative was already set 3 days back to help Boeing and to help GES, was because if you see now, that's what I was told, that the share prices of Boeing and GE, they just went up immediately after this report. So this is all a big game. My own personal views. I'm not saying that because this is my own personal views. I'm saying because this 2 days back, or as early as the 8th of July, naturally because they're big companies. What happened with Lion Air? Initially it was pilot fault. But then when they realized that yes, no, it was because of the angle of attack sensor which kicked in the MCAS. Finally, Boeing had to take back its word, and we all know that the 737 MAX free flow fleet was grounded because of that. So maybe that's my own view, that they didn't want the same thing to be happening again with the Dreamliners now. If something would have happened, yes, that is why I think that the line was, who forced it to include that line, which was not supposed to be required by the AIB, that at this stage of investigation, no recommendation for Boeing. And that's what the main thing. It's an official documentation. So my take is that yes, it was released or leaked to help someone. That is what. Otherwise, why did they come to know so 3 days in advance?
Captain Ranganathan, then would you agree at some point, 2024, June 12th, June 5th, sorry, Alaska Airlines crashed Boeing, that is Boeing 737, November 25th, 2024, Swift Airlines, Boeing 737, December 29th, Jeju Airlines, Boeing 737, and now June 12th. Sir, is this some kind of a strategy? Is there some kind of a pressure from Boeing? Is there some kind of a plot to save Boeing?
I wouldn't agree that it is some plot to save Boeing, but I have been watching and observing every single accident report. Not now. I can tell you we can go back to 1978, December 17, when Indian Airlines 737 crashed in Hyderabad. I was a witness to that because I was in the control tower when that happened. It was covered up by saying that the leading edge retracted, it malfunctioned, and because one of the executive big bosses was flying that aircraft. It was actually a power stall because they had not reset the speed. And the whole thing was done. And we were the only country in the world which were following a procedure that we start one engine, select the flaps, and the engineer confirms. So this kind of a cover-up and manipulating reports, and every time blame the pilot alone. But here, like Captain Bhatnagar also said, the engine failure did not take place. It was a manually shut off. The fuel selector was shut off. That is why the engines failed. So what is essential is, if they wanted to, the minister said, we're going to be transparent. If they are transparent, let them come out with a full CVR transcript, and I can tell you 90% of the doubts will be clarified.
Captain, we talk about CVR transcript, we talk about a report being kind of very sketchy, all of that. So, would you agree then that possibly there was we were a little too early to blame this on the pilot? Would you agree now?
No, it is, yeah, what I have said is a human intervention is the only way that can be shut down. Which pilot did will be able to identify with, and why he did it is the question. It is not that it is focused. There are times, could it be that he was under fatigue and he was under micro sleep? Because if there was no positive climb gear up call, then you know that there might have been micro sleep for 5-6 seconds, which could have developed into this. So you have to be very focused on. Yes, the report says he had sufficient rest, he had sufficient, the number of hours of rest and the days. But what happens at the time? Only in very frank CVR and the DFDR readout will clarify everything. And you need people who will give the report factually and not sort of what the famous word is used to massage the report. That's what they are doing.
Okay, gentlemen, my last question, my parting question is Captain Bhatnagar, what are you expecting from the full report? What would you like to see in the full report?
What I would like to see in the full report is the complete CVR transcript from the time the aircraft took off and the time when the CVR stopped the recording. Second by second, that will bring out a lot of doubts which people have right now. And absolutely, I am not in agreement with Captain Ranganathan at this point of time that manual intervention, because if there was a manual intervention, that would have been brought out by the AIB preliminary investigation report stating that there was no erroneous signal, the sensors were fine, everything is fine, which could have happened only when they would have given the complete CVR report. Now, in the absence of the CVR transcripts, second by second, it is very difficult to say whether the manual intervention was there or it was an erroneous signal. I am not the person who's doing investigation. If there is something, it is highly placed sources, doesn't mean anything to any one of us unless it is documented and authenticated by a governing body like AIB. Only then, yes. So if in the final, and we all know it is going to take a year, that's what the ICAO mandates. What will happen when after a year, whether we'll still remember what happened in this, what we are doing right now, and after a year, it will go under the carpet if something happens, because this is the time it's of crucial when, if something malfunction, or it is maintenance related or mechanical or electrical related, the entire 717 liner fleet would have to be grounded to get the checks done. After 1 year, if something happens. So what I am saying is transparency, which is not evident in this preliminary investigation report. That because lives have been lost, there are obviously 241 people, their nearest and dears, the families, they want the truth. Obviously, what is exactly, if Boeing is to be blamed or G is to be blamed, you will find the lawsuits happening all across, because there were UK passengers, there were US passengers. You will find there everything, or some other country's passenger. You will find the lawsuits, and it will go into how many billions and dollars or whatever happened. So this would have already started if that's my own opinion, my personal opinion. Had something would have gone, this would have already started the lawsuits. After 1 year, what will happen? My thing is, yes, the entire thing should come out, whether it was a manual intervention, whether the pilot did it, or whether it was an erroneous signal faulty, something which has sent to FedEx signal, because it has not been ruled out. So unless proven guilty, everything is, everyone is innocent. That is the main thing. So we should not cast our aspersions, and we should not speculate that yes, it is, since it is a manual intervention and since there is only two pilot. No, manual intervention has not been, or the electronic or faulty signal has not been ruled out officially. I would like to see anything coming out in subsequent to this by AIB that there was no mechanical fault, there was no electronic signal malfunctioning of any kind of the switches of fuel control. Only then yes. So as of now, I would disagree with Captain Ranganathan about this manual intervention, which has been established by some people or something.
Captain Ranganathan, lack of transparency and manual intervention cannot be confirmed. Mechanical failure cannot be ruled out. What's your last word, sir?
Mechanical failure is definitely ruled out by several experts. And if there was the mechanical failure, the Dreamliners would have been grounded. So the very fact that they've been flying around, if India feels that it is a mechanical failure which has caused that, they should not let. After all, when the A320 crash took place, they grounded the A320s for 1 year until they were satisfied. They can do the same thing here if they think that it was a mechanical failure. So I don't think it's a mechanical failure, but if only the AIB had been transparent, we would have known whether it was a human error or whether it was a mechanical failure.
So my only thing is, I'm also not saying mechanical failure. I'm saying that whether it was a software glitch, that has to be mechanical failure. Naturally, we all know that that's not a mechanical failure, any kind of it. But whether it was a software glitch, because of that, the erroneous signal went to FedEx without even moving the switches, that should have been ruled out by AIB preliminary investigation report. That would have put everything doubt to rest, that there was no mechanical failure. We all know there was no mechanical failure because there was no engine failure as such. There was no supply of fuel which was interrupted automatically or something. It was manual. It was a physical shutdown of the fuel shut-off valve through a signal. Now, the question remains that if it is not a mechanical failure, then the software glitch or erroneous signal to FedEx or to EEC, that also should have been brought out by the AIB in its report. Then people will, then they will start working on the next aspect of what to do next and what exactly was the reason. So mechanical failure, I am also agreeing with sir that there is no mechanical, but I am not ruling out any kind of erroneous or software problem in this entire crash.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time. It was indeed a pleasure talking to both of you all and very enlightening, let me tell you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sujit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Captain.
Thank you, Sujit. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.